Cloudflare seemed to have launched a WordPress competitor and they chose April 1st to do it. Is it actually a joke or is it something that we should actually be calling a spiritual successor for WordPress? That is what I'm going to discuss today in this video. Hey, I'm Ahmad Awais, and I'm an open source developer and founder of Command Code, a coding agent with taste. So I have deep interest in discussing this topic because I spent more than a decade building the core software of WordPress. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions, and we are going to unpack all of what is written in the introduction to EmDash, CMS post from Cloudflare. In full disclosure, I'm founder of Command Code, and if you go to our About page, you will actually see that we have great investors, but one of those great investors is actually Dane. So we love what Cloudflare is doing. This goes to say that Cloudflare also supports, what we are building. Taking it on a face, Cloudflare has this history of launching projects instead of April Fool jokes on 1st of April every year. I would know because I was one of the earliest users of Cloudflare. So when I built Langbase in Command Code, we chose Cloudflare as a host to a bunch of infrastructure. So when Dane went ahead and announced this, announcing EmDash, the WordPress spiritual successor built for modern web with TypeScript, which is serverless, MIT license, and built for the agent era, I had a lot of thoughts, right? I feel like you cannot just say these things so lightly nowadays, right? And this is coming right off the bat after Cloudflare actually vibe coded a Next.js in a competitor called Winix within a week and was kind of called out for it. This one, however, is a little bit different. So this is a tweet from Dean, and I instantly replied, I don't know if this comes close to being a WordPress successor. I mean, the idea is novel, don't get me wrong, but there are many things that are wrong about this. I feel like the WordPress-like look of their dashboard is throwing me off. And the entire, stab at WordPress for security and plugins, I don't know about that. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this and discuss WordPress versus EmDash. One of the first things I'm going to start with is, if you take a look at this, WordPress is a tool, the open source content management system. Content has this innate ability. It requires to be managed. The moment you start working with a bunch of team members and you are writing a lot of content, you would come to this realization as well. I started very early on WordPress. I started writing blogs maybe as early as 2001. And most of my blogs are actually built with WordPress. When I was in my early 20s, WordPress was the cool kid in town, right? There was Joomla, there was Drupal, and there was a bunch of other mess, like the Blogger platform from Google. But WordPress was it at that moment. How TypeScript and React are so cool nowadays, or agentic engineering is so cool nowadays. That is what we felt like working on WordPress. So now a lot has changed. WordPress is 24 years old. WordPress is right now still 40% of the internet. If you go to this W3 Text website, you will see that 60% of all the CMS in probably top 10 million websites is still WordPress. And that is almost 42%, like almost half of the web is WordPress. I think WordPress is successful because one of the biggest reasons was easy to install. WordPress had this famous 5-minute install, and this was one of the earliest wins. And then the second thing that kind of jumped on me was plugin ecosystem. It was open source or GPL friendly. It was super easy to install. So when I started working with WordPress, I found it very easy that I can easily test a bunch of different plugins and I don't have to go through the entire FTP route or whatnot. And then came the entire extensible infrastructure around this. Like the first thing was custom post types, CPTs, right? Where, by default, WordPress was actually just built for writing blog posts or, creating pages. But now with custom post types, you could create different things. You could sell things. You could create a books custom post type. You could create, a software custom post type, whatnot. And WordPress adoption actually completely spread like a fire because of that thing. And then the rest of it was maybe around 2011 or 10 when we got the REST API in WordPress and we started using it as a headless CMS of sorts. And then around the time when Gutenberg happened, I was very deeply involved in the Gutenberg project. WordPress actually started adopting earlier version of Fax.js, which became React.js. And then WordPress actually got Facebook to open source React. I remember creating the issue on GitHub going down because of this discussion around that issue and how WordPress kind of influenced a huge community and a huge tech firm like Facebook at the time to open source both GraphQL and React, right? So WordPress has this amazing ecosystem of developers, plugin, and you can also say themes that made it really, really fun to use. But around 5 or 6 years ago, something started to break. The ecosystem started to go in a different direction, and developers started to lose interest in WordPress. Developers started to build with React and TypeScript. I feel like developers kind of left the WordPress ecosystem when they found it to be very, very sticky, and the backward compatibility was a big issue or whatnot. And since then, while WordPress has continued to grow in the non-technical community, the super admins, the people who are not actually ready to pay for custom software, who depend on a lot of themes and custom plugins all day long. But the modern cutting edge stack has kind of moved away from the CMS, right? I think that is sort of what Cloudflare is trying to do. So Cloudflare has introduced EmDash. Cloudflare just recently acquired Astro. Astro is a framework that is built around content-driven websites, basically blogs, right? If you're writing a lot of blogs or building a lot of fast marketing websites, Fred and team did an amazing job in building Astro. And Astro can work with anything. It can work with Vue, React.js, I think Svelte as well, and it can even work without JavaScript, right? So it's a static site generation framework of sorts. So right after acquiring Astro, I think Cloudflare is actually trying to capture the CMS space of sorts. And if you read through this, blog post, they talk about WordPress being an old dog here, like 24 years old, started when there was no EC2 and created a huge ecosystem of servers. That is actually true. For example, building with WordPress, and I was a JavaScript developer of sorts or a web developer of sorts, and I was building with a bunch of different things, right? I remember studying like 26 different programming languages and wasn't able to decide which one to, build my expertise in. But because of WordPress, I ended up becoming a PHP and a JS developer of sorts, right? So a lot of people actually learn PHP because of WordPress, not because PHP was cool, but because WordPress was built in PHP. So developers started learning it, right? Similarly, when WordPress started, I think Git was not even built at that time. So it started on SVN. So a bunch of us started learning SVN, trunk, and whatnot based on WordPress. All of this goes to say that WordPress inspired a lot of developers to adopt a bunch of technologies that we only adopted because WordPress was built on top of it, right? Similar thing happened when WordPress created this ecosystem of servers, right? And that server always had this one thing. It would have like a cPanel. It would be cheap. I remember seeing anywhere from $1 to $100 per month servers, right? It would be shared. It would always have PHP and MySQL support in it. So this was the thing that WordPress did. WordPress inspired a lot of hosting companies to create a repeatable pack that is easily shared, that is cheap, which is built on top of this following tech. Make sure it is secure, make sure it is cheap, and a huge industry came out of this, right? Even now, if you try to host MySQL or Postgres or whatnot, you have to pay a bunch of amount of money to make sure that it can do a bunch of things. WordPress was this like a monolithic software where you can get everything. Installing WordPress would mean something like this. The WordPress stack would give you auth. It would give you content. So your, blog posts and pages, and it would give you media hosting right there. Then it was extensible with plugins and themes. And then you could hire cheap labor, developers everywhere on Fiverr or whatnot to build anything you want and customize, however you want. This was the WordPress stack. Nowadays, if you want to do all of this, you have to go after a bunch of different auth services. You have to buy a bunch of different CDNs to host media. And this is, this is where the developers actually have ended up a lot. Like theming space is mostly ShadCN and Tailwind, and plugin space is mostly, TypeScript, NPM packages or whatnot. And developers are able to infinitely customize, but non-technical people, it becomes very, very hard for them to use whatever developers can customize. And that's where WordPress actually won. That's why WordPress was successful. To put it simply, WordPress built out a CMS stack for everyone, both non and technical people, so devs. WordPress inspired hosting business, both shared and managed, and it was extremely easy to scale. You could easily hit 1 million visitors a day on a shared instance, by the way, right? And not bat an eye on it, or you could completely customize it. scale, and customization, right? So this is why I think WordPress became successful. A CMS stack, which is mostly always backward compatible. It is built for both non-technical and developers, even though in recent years it is more so built for the non-technical people, and developers are just supporting that because of the supply and demand. Like, a lot of people hire developers who want to customize WordPress. And it was able to inspire a typical LAMP stack or LAMP stack hosting business, which this entire industry kind of depends on, the GoDaddy, Kinsta, WP engines of this space. And it was very easy to scale and customize. This is why WordPress became super successful. Obviously, there was no EC2 or S3 and other, compute primitives that now developers have come to love and appreciate when this CMS was being built. Again, this is 24, 25 years old CMS, right? So Cloudflare is saying that we are rebuilding the CMS. They've been building it for 2 months, and this is built from grounds up. This is not built from, the WordPress core. This is a bold claim. I will tell you why just in a minute. And they're saying that EmDash is TypeScript and it is serverless. And their plugin architecture is extremely secure, built on top of their isolate-based worker, dynamic worker thing. Let's actually jump and see, check out what the playground is like, right? So they have a fancy little playground here. Still waiting. Okay, it's ready. Oh my God, this is so bad. This looks like a poorly vibe-coded WordPress dashboard. This does not look good. So when you say things like, this is built from the ground up, and then you build a dashboard like this, somebody like me would wonder, like, what is going on here? I remember having a discussion with the spacing of these widgets for weeks when we were redesigning the WordPress dashboard from, I think, maybe WordPress 3.1 to 3.4. I could be wrong, right? But oh my God, so much is wrong here. As a WordPress developer who spent a good amount of time in WordPress core, this looks bad. It would have been much better if they created a new dashboard for EmDash. First of all, we would not be able to judge it on every little thing like this. I hardly can read this. There's an accessibility issue here. The color should be much more darker to do the WCAG, I think 2.0 on this color. It's like EmDash is trying too hard to be like, hey, I am the new WordPress, migrate to me vibe, right? And I don't like it, right? But yeah, I'll give it a go. So there are pages, posts, media. This is very familiar. If you're coming from WordPress, this almost feels like vibe coded. I'm gonna go ahead to this page about. Oh my God, this is so bad. I was just on this live stream. I was actually reading Matt Mullenweg's blog post on this particular EmDash feedback. There you go. And it's not tiny MCE. I think it's something called portable text, which is the same thing. And this is what Matt is saying. This is regression. This does not look good. This feels very bad. Anybody who is using WordPress would have a lot to say about this. A lot of people who are not deep into the CMS space, they think that just by slapping a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get plugin on a content page like this would give this a CMS vibe. That is not it. This is actually really bad. Why? Because, like, for example, I cannot write Markdown here. Let's say I'm going to do this. I don't want to do a WYSIWYG here. I want to see what I'm writing. Where's the text only mode here? I don't know where that is. So this feels like a regression. This feels like what WordPress used to look like back in like 2007, 2008, right? And we have gone so much ahead. We have built a React-based Gutenberg stack built with blocks, which is so much more modern than this. And something is continuously failing. So this is their Cloudflare's playground. I expect it to work. I'm a ex-WordPress developer. You want to convince me that I should be using this from the perspective of somebody coming from WordPress. They are going to look at this. The first thing they are going to do is they're going to try and change the title, save it. They will see it fail, publish it. Okay, it is published. Live view, no, nothing was changed. What? WordPress can show you the live preview even without publishing anything. And what is going on here? This is so bad. The design is so bad. The experience is. Let me change this to EmDash. EmDash. And let's put it EmDash here. I'm going to save. Apparently it got saved. Live view. Now I can probably change it. I have a feeling that if I were to do this, it will still fail. And how do I update this? I can't update this. I have to save it. I have to unpublish it. Then, what happened to my content here? My content just got lost. What? So let's say this is my old content. I'm going to save it. I'm going to publish it. I'm going to live view it. What? Why is it still saying about? What happened to old that I wrote here? What is going on? You're building a content management system, CMS. You cannot lose my content. What is happening to my content? This is really bad. I can say no nice words about this. I'm moving on because this is a vibe coded mess of sorts, I think. This gives me a really, really bad view. If I cannot trust my CMS to keep to store my content, how can I move forward? Like even in WordPress, I remember working on that thing where, if you have added something and you accidentally close that tab, even that something would be stored and WordPress would give you, that, you left this copy, you didn't save, you didn't publish, it's still in your browser, you want us to save it. That thing, I don't know. If you are saying that this is a content management system, the first thing I'm going to judge you on is if it can manage my content. Moving on to blog posts, I can see a bunch. I'm going to delete one to see if that works. This UI is oddly familiar. It feels like they're absolutely copying WordPress. I'm going to create a new blog post. I'm going to call it old. I'm going to put some image here. What happened to the image that I had uploaded? Okay, I'll let that slide. There's old content here. I'm going to call it old. I'm going to publish it. Didn't I just publish it? Why is it asking me to publish again? Add new 1, 2. No, I think I saved it. The button just jumped on me, so I don't know where this new button came from. And it says old, and here's first comment. There's a reason why when you install WordPress, it comes with a bunch of placeholder. So you can see things like this. Okay, if I change it to new, save it, it is changing. So that is probably good, but it was not changing on pages. So something is wrong with pages. Comments, pending, approved. Yeah, maybe we should have the all comments thing at the first, like WordPress. If you're copying WordPress, take the good bits of WordPress. Don't add a weird new user experience that I'm not used to as a WordPress developer. This feels very much like they gave a couple of screenshots of WordPress admin dashboard and a coding agent vibe coded this or something like that, right? Like I don't mind this, but does it actually work? Doesn't seem to work. I'm trying to bring this down here. I can't. Okay, weird. What is this? Content block menu, blah, 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 blah. Let's make it menu. And here I can call it link. How do I link primary navigation? What is menu? I have no idea what display a navigation menu. Okay. How do I add a link? Am I supposed to add a link here? Let's try. Command code, save, view the site. Okay. This is the sidebar, so it should be somewhere in the sidebar. Okay. So yeah, the content block actually does not render content probably. Yeah, I have a lot of feelings here. Moving on, they have some reusable content blocks. They're calling sections. If I add a new section, maybe it will get stored. They already have a newsletter sign up section that you can probably edit. I have rather no idea how to use this. If I copy this, it is copying this. Is this a shortcode like WordPress? If I go here and put this here as this, will it work? Saved, unpublished, live view. No, I don't know how that works. And that is not quite apparent. So I'm going to move forward. Categories, tags, looks very familiar. Why? What is byline? These colors are giving me strong bootstrap vibe. So, which is not good if it is not apparent, by the way. Shouldn't this be in a user's profile page, which is where you should have all of the bio or whatnot? I don't know what the bylines thing is. Maybe because they're called EmDash, they're leaning heavily into this editorial or journalistic vibe or whatnot. We can create content custom post types. Oh, this is good. If I created books or book, actually, where's the button? Is this the button? Yes. I can add more. Can I add like a multi-select? 1, 2, 3. 1 add field. What happened to the multi-select I just added? Just disappeared. Text. Okay, this got added, but the multi-select one did not. Select multi 1, 2, 3 is getting added, but when I was adding 1, 1, 2, 3, it just dies without any errors. So like it has a strong vibe coded thing going on here, a bunch of errors that should not exist. I don't know. And now if I go to books CPT, I can see one of them here. This is good. This is how WordPress works. So yeah, this is pretty good. In plugins, this is the part which I'm most excited about. So it's a little bit sad that there are no default plugins here for me to play around with. And I think they built a really nice import your website from WordPress thing, which I've been looking at, on different tweets or whatnot. This entire thing feels like a silly UI copy of WordPress though. Major thumbs down for that. Okay, going back into the blog post, they're saying this is a modern TypeScript variant. By the way, I have not shared this publicly, but I have been building on something like this as well, just for my own, projects. I have been calling it TypePress. I started it like 2 months ago, and it's SQLite based, it's file storage based, MDX based, and it has a WordPress compatible API, WordPress compatible TypeScript interface. Like you can literally feel that in our API or in things like hooks or whatnot. It's the same paradigm. Like for example, this is how you would register a shortcode. You can see they almost, you can get this idea of like, oh, am I in PHP world or is this TypeScript, right? That is how close the entire, syntax is. In fact, 3 years ago, I was actually planning to launch a startup called WordPress. I still have the domain for it. It had a CLI, it was using WordPress, but you could use anything for the front end. And it was TypeScript and a lot of fun with a sandbox environment, super secure for your WordPress. So you could run actual WordPress, but take out what you need from it. This is sort of what I think Cloudflare is trying to do here. Moving forward, it is MIT license, so this is good. WordPress has been a GPL license thing where if you create something with WordPress, it has to be GPL. Otherwise, I think you're breaking the terms of the license. Also, Matt Mullenweg, one of the co-founders of WordPress, is not going to be happy if you're not doing GPL, right? So that is one thing that is going for it. WordPress has accomplished a lot. It has practically helped build a generation of developers who understand how to extend a software. But TypeScript has started winning. Astro is a phenomenal web framework nowadays. And EmDash is committing to build something like that, which is open source, costs a little because Cloudflare cost a little in the beginning, at least, while fixing the core problems of WordPress. And the core problem is WordPress plugin security crisis. 96% of WordPress issues are happening due to plugins. I don't like this one bit. It's like saying 96% of accidents happen on the cross sections, right? Or where there are no traffic lights or whatnot, right? This will always be true. Remember how big the Axios hack was just like a couple weeks ago? Nothing is secure. Your Python packages are not secure. Your JavaScript NPM packages are not secure. So WordPress plugins are not secure. This is the basis of any software. So calling a WordPress not secure or WordPress plugin security crisis because of that, I think it's not good. It's a stab at the WordPress ecosystem that anybody coming from the WordPress ecosystem would not like. You want to win us over. You want to win people who've been building with WordPress for 15 or 20 years. This is not how you do it. I have a dislike of this entire thing. I think this is very distasteful. Instead, it would have been much better to share the new way of building plugin that EmDash is kind of coining here. They have this dynamic worker thing where you can run your generated code or untrusted code, and an EmDash plugin has to explicitly declare in its manifest what it needs, and it runs in a separate isolate, which probably looks like this. So a malicious plugin in WordPress can do anything with the WordPress stack you have, but the EmDash way of doing this is rather complicated. But what they're trying to probably show is you can run untrusted code in dynamic worker, and if something goes wrong, it just stays wrong here, but all of your other things will be secure. I don't think that will be true though, because if you look at this code, by the way, this is the only plugin code I could find. I literally Googled EmDash plugins. There was really nothing I could find here. I actually tried to go and check in this if I could install a plugin, because there's a huge piece of pitch, that our plugins are much better than WordPress. But where are those plugins? This does not tell me much, by the way, right? This tells me that, these are the capabilities you're signing up for, and this is when it will run. Is this for developers? If this is for developers, maybe they will understand it, but developers would not have security issues with WordPress either. Maybe I could probably see both sides of the things. What Cloudflare is trying to get at is something like this. So you install WordPress, it's a monolithic. So you get your auth, you get your content, and you get your plugins, and you have your database. But plugins can do anything to your content, anything to your auth, anything to your database, and they can also contact external services without you having any say so. This is how WordPress is at the moment. What EmDash is saying is we are built different. You will be building on top of primitives. one primitive will be worker, and the other primitive will be a dynamic worker. And each plugin will be run in a separate dynamic worker. So EmDash is saying that all of your EmDash CMS will be in a worker, and in primitives like R2, which is their storage, and D1, which is the database, this worker will talk to this particular database, and each plugin will actually have their isolated dynamic worker. And at this point, it is worth discussing what is actually a worker. So if you scroll down here in their blog post, they actually talk about this, that the scale to zero problem of WordPress or whatnot, because WordPress is a monolithic and it has to be always on. EmDash is solving that problem, but because it is being built on top of Cloudflare primitives, and Cloudflare workers are actually isolates. Workers are actually built on top of V8 engine, the same engine that powers Chrome. And every worker is like a new Chrome tab. So similar to how this tab cannot see what is in this tab, that is the isolation layer they depend on. And they are very, very cheap compared to a traditional container architecture. You can have a bajillion workers in the same machine, and they have very real limits, by the way. Like if you go to Cloudflare worker docs and look at their platform limits, you will see that for free, you can only do 100,000 requests a day. And then the max amount of memory each worker can have is 128 MB. This is a hard limit. If you're trying to do something more, like you're trying to process a huge PDF that has like 1,000 pages, which is the problem we actually ran into when building lang-based memory on top of workers. You can't do that with workers at all. You have to have like a full container where you have like 4 GB of RAM, so you can load the entire, PDF in a memory first to be able to split it, right? Things like that, and a bunch of other things like, you can only have 500 workers in your Cloudflare account. You can use Cloudflare for platforms, which is pretty good, but it comes with its own set of limits. So everything serverless has weird limits to it. Like for example, if you're building a million websites on top of Cloudflare platform, you will run into this weird limit that we actually ran into when building chai.new, which was an agent of agents that could build any agents and sites and deploy it to Cloudflare for platforms. And this is, if you have more than 1,200 people doing something within 5 minutes, you will just hit that limit. This limit is very scary, and there's no easy way to figure out how do we get over this limit or how do we fix that limit or whatnot. Again, this just goes to say that while there are huge positives and pros that comes with this type of compute platform, and it is serverless, it can scale to zero, but it is also a vendor lock-in for Cloudflare. Even though their Cloudflare's runtime Workert is open source, I have yet to see anybody deploy Workert on their own. Just like Matt actually said something like this in his blog post. Yeah, a random web host in Indonesia charging 9 cents a month can host WordPress. Your Raspberry Pi can host WordPress, right? But I don't know how many are doing this. So this is like, a Cloudflare vendor lock-in. So while the motivation to build EmDash is good, it's not the same motivation that WordPress has. WordPress wants to be the most, and always has wanted to be the most open, content management system that you can do and take anywhere. I think Matt actually said something like this, the spirit of WordPress. Yeah, WordPress exists to democratize publishing, right? Anybody should be able to do it. We want to put it everywhere. WordPress on a Raspberry Pi, on your phone, desktop, and the WordPress playground, which actually just now runs in your browser using WebAssembly, right? This is a WordPress website, which is running in the browser right now. So if I were to go and edit this site, this is a really nice Gutenberg blocks-based framework that you can use to edit the site or whatnot, right? So WordPress has this nice ecosystem around it that you just don't see in EmDash. And EmDash feels a lot like a regression of sorts. And when you call it like a spiritual successor of WordPress, like what is that spirit that you're trying to build on top of? The spirit of calling WordPress out for random plugin security code? I don't think that is it. The spirit of saying that the marketplace of WordPress is a lock-in? I have never once felt that way. The WordPress marketplace is an awesome place to put your plugins and themes at. It is reviewed. Nowadays, in the time of agentic engineering, we know how long those and how useful those human reviews are. WordPress has always been that way. And you only go to that WordPress marketplace if you want the benefits of a marketplace, because there are millions of people looking for themes and plugins in a marketplace. You actually, by publishing to that marketplace, you can get a lot of eyes on your whatever you're building, right? You're more than welcome to publish a WordPress plugin on your own on GitHub, put it on NPM for all it takes, and anybody can use it, right? So that is not a problem And that is not the spirit of WordPress. WordPress actually wants to be very, very open, right? GPL license is a lock-in. If you build something with WordPress, it has to be GPL license. This is the thing that EmDash says that they are trying to avoid with MIT license. I kind of welcome this. MIT license is great. You can do whatever the fuck you want with MIT license. So the plugins and themes you build can have any license you want, but plugins can run independently in a secure sandbox. A plugin can be provided to your site and can be trusted without you ever having to see the code. I don't know about that, right? I will never trust closed source software. It could be true to say that, this malicious plugin or malicious EmDash dynamic worker would not cause harm to my site, but both as a developer and as a user, I know I will give a plugin access to a bunch of things. Right now, by looking at just this code, it is already asking for 2 capabilities and a hook, right? If a plugin is serious enough, imagine something like an e-commerce plugin or WooCommerce. It will ask for so many things that every user would treat it like a OAuth page or a terms page. Yeah, accept everything. Get me this plugin. Let me use that. And again, the problem would not be solved. This is by nature a problem I think you cannot solve. So calling it as a good thing for EmDash, importing it in spirit of WordPress, this is distasteful. I don't like this. I think it could have been shown in a much better way, where Cloudflare could have shown that this is how we are solving the problem and this is how what we think the future is. WordPress tried to do their own thing and we think that is respectable. We are trying to do our own thing because our worker platforms is pretty good, and on our worker platforms we can run untrusted code, right? But comparing it to WordPress, I think is distasteful. Later on, they also tell that they have X402 support, which I think WordPress has as well, like a bunch of plugins I've seen in the market building on top of it. So that's not something new. Scale to 0. You can find very, very cheap WordPress hosting companies. So I don't know who we are talking to here, but I see that Cloudflare is doing something really fun. Like, I have always loved building on top of Workers platform. So from that point of view, it does feel like if you are building on your own a small marketing site, and when I say small, as in like you won't build a multi WordPress like thing with it, a serverless platform would actually outsmart WordPress hosting by a lot. But WordPress is not just about its hosting. People are not trying to use WordPress to save money. WordPress has so many more customization in options, availability, resources, developers who can customize it compared to a new CMS, which has always been an issue. If you build a new CMS, you have to build a community around it. You have to get developers to care about it. You have to get several different players in the market to be able to easily deploy it, and then hope that you end up building a marketplace that will eventually work. All of which WordPress has and is missing from EmDash because it is new. And things to like about EmDash are definitely that it is built on top of Astro. In my tests, as you saw here, a bunch of things broke. I don't like this. I could easily use a coding agent to build a CMS to justify my needs on top of Astro or whatever I want, and I can test it. If you are going to provide me with a CMS, the least I expect is that it should be working in every which way. We all saw how I was not able to edit this page and how this page continuously loses the content that I have put in. I love the fact that I can use Tailwind for styling, and it's just a JSON file that could be a seed for it. Astro is pretty good. So I think all the benefits of Astro being fast or whatnot would just automatically transfer to this. And one of the most common things, I think there are a bunch of comments on how functions.php is its execution engine or whatnot. We all know WordPress is a monolithic. Comparing a monolithic software with serverless is the oldest debate there is. Serverless has pros and cons. Monolith has pros and cons, right? So let's just settle this debate there. What I really like though is that this is probably the first AI native CMS. I really enjoy this. It has a CLI and skills. They've built a bunch of skills. I was just looking at those skills somewhere here. Let me actually grab the GitHub link. And you should, by the way, go ahead and start this. They have a bunch of skills here that they build. Like if you're trying to build a WordPress, if you know how to build a WordPress plugin, if you use command code or Claude Code or any coding agent, you can just use this skill and tell it that this is the type of WordPress plugin I have, and can you please convert it to EmDash? This skill will do wonders. I think it will be able to very easily understand what to translate from WordPress to EmDash. So that is a lot of fun. But I have yet to do a test, so we will see, right? And there's also a WordPress theme to EmDash thing here, which has a bunch of content in it. So there's a template, there's some references, and a bunch of different things, right? I can't shake this feeling that a new developer to the Cloudflare ecosystem will get confused by this and would feel like, what did I just do, right? Because it will feel a lot like AWS. When you deploy a Terraform template to AWS, it ends up provisioning a lot of services on AWS. I feel like that is what a developer might feel coming from a WordPress monolithic I buy a specific piece of stack, $100 a month or $20 a month, and I just pay for that. Versus I'm buying into a serverless world where I could be charged a lot more for who knows what, because I don't understand a bunch of these things. Problem, right? This is again a problem that not a developer would probably face a lot, but users of WordPress would. And since this is trying to get developers excited, I would hope. Yeah. So anyway, moving on. I really like that they have a CLI, they have scales, and this might be a very early view of what an agentic CMS might look like, but it might not be actually true, right? I think the future of agentic CMS is just a website that can code itself, right? Not a pre-built CMS that has pre-decided API that is trying to do a lot of things that may or may not be needed by anyone. I think writing code is absolutely cheap now. So we should only be writing code that is necessary instead of, here's my boilerplate. The time where your boilerplate worked for me was the time when I didn't want to write all of that code. I neither had the time and the investment or the ability to bear the cost of that particular boilerplate. But now I can just talk to any coding agent. I can say, build me this, this, and that, and it will build things the way I want and only what I want, right? So I feel like in 2026, launching a new CMS is a big bet. I like the fact that they are using passkeys for auth, and auth is cooked in. I have to again check how good this is. Platform limits, and there you go. So your database cannot be more than 500 MB for free and 10 GB on worker paid. I think I have a bunch of WordPress websites that have a lot more in their database than 10 GB. So that will be the first thing someone like me would worry about. And then there are all sorts of other problems as well. Like D1, like if you look at the pricing of D1, it is based on the number of requests you are sending and not based on the type of compute you have. So on a $20 server from say Kinsta or something like this, we know we are only paying $20, and if we get more load, we will not be able to serve those limits. But on something like D1, because it is serverless, if something goes wrong, you will end up with a huge bill. You will have to pay a lot more. And I'm willing to bet that even with my current website on MySQL, which is currently hosted on Kinsta with WordPress, by the way, the amount of automations that I run would render more than $25 bill on D1 alone, right? So yeah, there's something to be said about serverless. While it is like a huge unlock, it comes with its own limits and expenses and distributed, compute problem. And that is pretty much about it. So in the closing, I would probably say this. It is not easy to compete with WordPress. We saw the playground. I still couldn't find a single EmDash plugin. Maybe that is on me. But if you are talking, if half of your content on the introduction is about how WordPress plugins are so bad and a security nightmare, even though I understand the Cloudflare stack so well, I want to see more demos. I want to see more plugins. I want to see and play around with how that experience would look like, right? That is not there. I definitely feel like the vendor lock-in is going to be a huge deal for a lot of people. For me personally, I don't mind the vendor lock-in of Cloudflare. I think Cloudflare is pretty amazing. I would not bat an eye, but built on top of Cloudflare. I just find that EmDash in its current state, and it's a new early version, I get that. I don't feel like it is a true spiritual successor to WordPress. We already discussed why WordPress is successful. And the only thing that's left is, what is the future of WordPress? I think WordPress is here to stay. I think developers are leaving WordPress. This is happening because you can build anything with AI. And this is a little bit self-serving as well. I will be the first one to acknowledge that. I'm founder of Command Code, which is a coding agent. But I'm building this coding agent because I think that is the eventual dev tool, right? That is all you really need. If I want to use a CMS 1 year, 6 months down the road, and I have enough time, let's say a week or so, I will build my own CMS. And I have done just that. I built Typepress 2 months ago for a use case, and it does all the things in the WordPress way that I am used to, as you can see with the API here, just for me. I didn't make it public because, I don't know if the API is that good. It's still private, but just for me, for my use case, I was able to build this within 2 days, right? And this mimics the entire WordPress API, by the way. It has the same ecosystem. You can build, a very simple blog, looks very similar to what I think EmDash is. These are what pages look like or whatnot. This is what your HTML looks like or whatnot. It has a complete plugin ecosystem. Here's an analytics plugin that has very similar API to WordPress. If you're coming from the WordPress world, you have your hooks and whatnot. And it works in the very similar fashion as well. So I think developers are actively leaving pre-built boilerplate software. What about users? I think users are now builders, right? And to some extent, they are able to vibe code anything they want. Instead of going to hire a developer, they are able to build a basic version of it through different vibe coding websites like Replit, Lovable, and the likes, right? So what is the future of WordPress when users can build basic software and developers can build whatever they want? I feel like the WordPress usage might go down and down and down. It's not going to go up. That is what I'm predicting. And I think the only thing we will end up relying on will be APIs and CLIs. So if I am building something that requires storage, I want a really good, reliable API for that storage, blob storage. So I will go to S3 or R2. Or I don't know, Tigris data if I want super speed or whatnot. And then the thing that I'm building on top of that, I will not use a pre-built CMS, a pre-built API, a pre-built package for it. I have this mandate that I don't want dependencies in my software anymore. So anything new that I'm building now, I end up building the dependencies first because AI has made it super easy for me to do that. This is why I've taken a huge bet on Taste that if I build enough software, command code would build a skill of how I write code. So I can build a lot more of it whenever I want. And that is, I feel, where the world is going. And APIs are generally quite verbose, by the way, right? CLIs are easiest possible interfaces of those APIs. If there's a CLI for whatever you are doing, whatever package you have built, a CMS or whatnot, I can use my agent with your CMS or whatever. That I see already happening with EmDash, right? So that part is good. One more thing that I can kind of think of, less touch points. If whatever you are building has less touch points on different pieces of infrastructure, like if you're building something that requires a database and then it requires a vector database and then it requires storage and a bunch of other things, maybe software like WordPress will continue to win in that space for a while. But what I'm seeing developers do a lot is they are building things with less touch points, where here's a file system and I'm going to just throw all of my data in those files. File systems have worked for 60 years now, and I think they are only going to grow a lot more, where we will just dump a lot of information in the CMS. I think the management of your content will be done by an AI agent, and I think the content will just become files. This is what I think the future of CMS is. You throw a bunch of files in folders in a blob storage, and then run your coding agent on top of it. This is what I do all the day long nowadays as well. Right now, everything that is happening, I have a bunch of things that are recording me. No matter what type of conversation I'm having throughout the day, I have a local AI model running that dumps a bunch of content files, transcripts of whatever I'm doing. And then at the end of the day, my coding agent, command code, runs on those files and it does fun things. It builds software, it builds content from it. In the system part, I'm not so sure about. I think this is what is changing almost every other week with every AI model becoming more and more intelligent. It's hard to imagine what the future would look like, right? But this, I feel like, is the future of WordPress. It will still be here for people who are using it for reasons that developers probably do not agree with. And I think eventually a lot of developers will leave WordPress because of the backward compatibility, because of the lot of touch points it has, and because it is, sad to say, because it is PHP, right? A lot of developers nowadays don't care about PHP, right? And that's pretty much it. Let me know in your comments what you think is the future of WordPress, what you think are the good things from the EmDash CMS from Cloudflare. And if you have built a couple of plugins, or if you have seen a couple of plugins from EmDash in the wild, I would love to see. I would love to try them out. All in all, I really like that Cloudflare is building a CMS. I really like that they are exploring what content would look like managed on their primitives. What I don't like is I don't think it's a spiritual successor of WordPress, and I don't think calling like WordPress has so many security issues is the right or tasteful way to go about it. With that, this is pretty much it. Peace.